Hello here, and welcome to another edition of the Husker Online Show. Sean Callahan, Steve Sipple, Robin Washut. We're back from Boulder. It's good to be back home. We've been on the road 2 weeks in a row at Minnesota and Colorado. I think Matt Rule would probably say it's good to be home. Not exactly an ideal starting schedule for a first-year head coach. Minnesota had one of their largest crowds in history, and then Colorado had its largest crowd since 2008 in their win over the Huskers. But lots to delve into here in the opening headlines segment. Let's first talk big picture. Questions about the quarterback position with Jeff Sims. We'll get a better read towards week end on his status, but man, that is our opening headline, because if these turnover issues continue for Nebraska, the Huskers lead the country right now in turnovers. It's hard to be optimistic the rest of the way. I mean, Nebraska could lose all of their games if these turnovers continue, as Nebraska currently has a nation-leading 8 turnovers through 2 games.
Yeah, we have to assess the situation for what it is. First of all, you don't know if, as we sit here on Tuesday at, I don't know what the hell time it is,
2:21.
We don't know if Jeff Sims will be available for this game because of an ankle sprain he suffered with 9:21 left in the loss at Colorado. So first of all, we have to get that squared away, which we don't know where that is right now. Then if Sims is healthy, he will be the starter. We better get that clear, right? That's what Rule said on Monday. If Sims is healthy, he'll be the starter. But Rule said he has to clean up the turnover issue. If he isn't healthy, probably Heinrich Haarberg would be your starting quarterback, because Chubba Purdy has had a tweaked groin for the last week and a half. So there you go. That's the setup. Where it goes from there, at this moment, we don't know.
Yeah, and so I guess the last update we got from Matt Rule was that while Sims isn't practicing, he's still quote unquote moving around on the fields to the side where all the guys that are out, they do their rehab stuff and whatnot. So I mean, it's not like he's just completely unable to walk and on crutches or anything like that. Like he's doing some, I'm assuming, light jogging and maybe some just conditioning stuff. So that's at least positive for his availability. Now the question is, not only will he be healthy enough to play, but how is he going to look once he does return to the practice field in the full capacity? I think that's another layer to this whole thing right now, where this discussion isn't just about whether or not he's healthy or not. I think a lot of it is, does Nebraska's offense have the trust in him still? Matt Rule says they do, but what happens if he has another turnover early in the game against Northern Illinois? How much does that conversation change, and how short is that leash going to be, given his maybe potential limitations on that injury, and 2, the pressure surrounding needing to get that offense going?
One, what if the ankle is bothering him? Mm-hmm. What does Jeff Sims do his best?
Run.
So you take away that. What's he not do very well?
Pass.
So it kind of
take snaps,
puts things in a different context if he's not able to run at the level he needs to be able to run at. But nobody had the guts on Tuesday to ask the players how Jeff practiced today. Like I was kind of waiting.
Wait a second. Did he practice today?
Nobody asked. Like I thought maybe I didn't want to jump on the grenade, but I thought somebody would be like, so how'd Jeff practice today? Kind of like play dumb, babe in the woods, and see if somebody would take the bait. But I don't think anybody wanted to go down that rabbit hole.
Is that appropriate to ask the players how the quarterback's doing? Is it appropriate?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean,
you're kind of tricking them there, right? It's kind of trickery. I guess what I'm saying is I can be overly cautious about things, I know, but I almost think the head coach or a coach, Satterfield, for instance, should be the one that addresses that, not Gabe Irvin.
Right.
I agree. I mean, the health status of the quarterback, Sean. Are you sure you want that to come from Michael DeBear?
If somebody could just say, yeah, he practiced, it was good to see him back out. We didn't even get that.
That'd have been a trick.
They did talk about Sims, though. The players did, and just has his response. And of course, as you would expect, it was all positive, saying that he's done a good job of putting these early struggles behind him. He doesn't wear his emotions on his sleeve. He's kind of going about his business. So I guess from that perspective, that's I think says a lot about Jeff, just kind of maintaining that stable emotions, despite going through some real struggles early on.
I guess that's what you want. You don't want him flaking out. But,
Yeah.
I mean, he's been a consistent. He's just turned it over throughout the course of his career. That's largely defined him. So you're just waiting to see now if he evolves. Is he going to evolve as a player? Some players do evolve. Some don't. And that's what we're kind of waiting to see. So far, you'd say he's just the guy he was at Georgia Tech.
Well, and this will be Matt Rule's first home game at Memorial Stadium. For me, the biggest thing now is, can they establish an identity of what this team is? We think we know what the strengths are. We think they have a pretty good defense that they can build this around. We think they can at least run the ball. But can they develop an identity and play 4-quarter collective football on all three phases? Complementary football is the word I wanted to use. Complementary football. And we've seen taste of it. I mean, at Minnesota, and we saw it for about 2 quarters in Boulder. I mean, at the 5-minute mark of the second quarter, with right before halftime, it looked like the time of possession was going to be 20-10 at the half,
in favor of Nebraska.
And they're driving. I mean, Sipple's cracking his knuckles, getting ready to write a world-class column here at this point. And
was I cracking my knuckles?
I think you're just trying to find a seat in that crowded.
It was crazy
press box.
Well, here's the deal. Matt Rule did sort of address the blueprint yesterday. He said, when it all comes together, we'll be a team that can run for 250 yards, play strong defense and special teams. And that's going to be the formula. So he said it. I mean, now 250 yards. Let's think about 250 yards. Nebraska hasn't averaged 250 yards rushing but one time in 20 years. That's 2012. And it had Amir Abdullah and Rex Burkhead. And Taylor Martinez rushed for 1,000 yards that year. And they had three offensive linemen who played 5+ years in the NFL. So it's a little different. 250.
The sack adjust yards, too, are the key. Because in the college game, they count the sack losses in the rush total, which makes no sense. But they can't really switch that because it would throw off all the record books. So I always go right to the sack adjust yards. What's the true sack adjust? And at Minnesota, Nebraska ran for over 200 sack adjust yards.
Yeah, and now listen, I want to be clear on that. I like the ambition. I mean, I think it's good to be ambitious like that. They're averaging 201.5 right now rushing, Nebraska. 201.5 rushing yards on the ground. So he thinks it can go up. I mean, you know where it's going, Robin. Is this the offensive line to get that done?
They've shown flashes of it. I think maybe the best example for me was that second quarter against Colorado, to where they were moving the line. Gabe Ervin was getting chunk runs. Yep. They were able to do that traditional run game at a level we haven't seen from Nebraska in a long time. And so that I think is kind of the ideal vision of what this year's Nebraska offense can look like when things are working. But the problem with that is you're walking such a fine line when you're shortening the game like that, and you're putting so much pressure on your defense that when you make mistakes, especially, not even to mention the level Nebraska's making mistakes right now, but when you turn the ball over, it's a lot bigger of an issue than when you're scoring 30 to 40 points per game, because you can mask those types of things when you've got a high-powered offense. But when you're a ball control, grind it out, shorten the game offense that Nebraska kind of has to be right now, I mean, that makes these types of mistakes so crippling.
All right, when we come back, we're going to delve more into the offense as we'll go through the offensive storylines of the week. And we'll talk some Northern Illinois. We haven't really gotten too much into that. We'll hit on that next. You're listening here to the Husker Online Show. And we're back here on the Husker Online Show. Sean Callahan, Steve Sipple, Robin Washett, as we get you ready for the home opener here, 6 p.m. game on FS1, Nebraska and the Northern Illinois Huskies. Before we get to that, this segment of the show is brought to you by Caldera men's skincare products. Guys, you brush your teeth today. Why is that? Because it's a healthy part of your day and you don't want bad teeth. I want you to take another step and add skincare habits to your daily routine. I just did, and I promise you, I'm never going back. I'm hooked on Caldera Labs high-performance men's skincare products. True story. I use it every morning. It's great. Yeah, you put it on, you feel good.
Good.
It's found that 94% of men's skin showed overall younger appearances after using the product for only a few weeks. Caldera Lab is the regimen you've been looking for. You can get a great promo deal right now by simply visiting calderalab.com. Use promo code Husker to get 20% off. That's calderalab.com, promo code Husker, to get the 20% off special here that we're offering here for our listeners of Husker Online. Thanks again to Caldera Lab for sponsoring us here on the Husker Online show. All right, guys, let's get into those offensive storylines for Nebraska going into this game. We've already kind of hit on the quarterback. Let's go running back. It was a dose of Ramir Johnson and Gabe Ervin Jr. They split the reps in terms of play counts. It was a career high day for Gabe Ervin Jr. No Anthony Grant, though, in that game. It's kind of been somewhat of a hot button because Jeff Sims was not benched for his fumbles, but Anthony Grant was. Will we see Anthony Grant this week, and what do you expect that running back rotation to look like?
Well, I would think you'd see Anthony Grant, but here's the wild card in that conversation is we don't know how he came back and practiced last week. He had the fumble at Minnesota. I don't know what his mindset was. I still think he might be their best running back. I'm not convinced he's not. I've not seen anything that would suggest he's not their best running back. But there's been issues. There's been fumble issues. So I thought Ervin looked good. 17 carries, 74 yards is good. It was good. I mean, they look good. They didn't look great running the ball. They looked fine. They got to go to another level. If they're going to play the kind of football that Rule wants, that part of the equation has to be better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would probably evaluate Ervin as good.
He was good.
I mean, just the fact that he did what he needed to do, but he didn't do much more. Like, he had the one explosive 26-yard run, but that's a play where maybe a more explosive back takes it to the house. And he got caught fairly easily in the secondary. So that's, I think, what right now you're lacking with Gabe Ervin. You don't have that explosion. You get the guy that can churn out 3 to 4 yard runs, but again, that just makes it hard because then you're facing a third down pretty much every set of plays that you got to convert. And it just puts a lot of pressure on your execution and even more to make high pressure throws for a quarterback that is struggling right now. So getting Grant more involved, assuming that you trust him to hold on to the football, I think would be a bonus, certainly, because he's that guy that can run through contact to where a 3 or 4 yard run turns into a 6 or 7 yard run because he's moving guys backwards. And right now, I haven't seen enough of that from Gabe Ervin. So, again, I think it depends on what he's doing between Sunday and Friday. That is going to dictate how much he plays going forward these next couple games.
I think when you look at these backs, a part of their style, Nebraska needs to play a clean ball control game. If they actually played a clean kind of Minnesota style, Iowa style game on offense, they would wear people down and probably begin. But when you turn it over the way Nebraska is done, everything you want to do gets thrown out the window.
Mm-hmm. Right. It started looking like in the second quarter, like you've alluded to it,
the body blows.
Yeah. Midway through the second quarter, I told you guys, okay, this is starting to look like you want it to look to beat Colorado 0-0 midway through the second quarter. And they were starting to get downhill. There were some good downhill runs in that second quarter. And then as Matt Rule alluded to on Monday, the chemistry got interrupted by the turnovers, a drop, snap, unforced error, and then a pick, back-to-back possessions. And then the game got away from them a little bit. I'd say it got away from them. The best way to put it is Nebraska never really fully recovered from being 10 zip down. So they got back to 13-7. And then, of course, Colorado struck with that long pass play, beat Tommy Hill. Mm-hmm. But again, this is mostly on Sims. Because Colorado surged ahead and got momentum in that crazy environment because of 2 bad turnovers.
You're listening here to the HuskerOnline show as we talk Nebraska offensive storylines. We did see some of these receivers and tight ends get going, which they didn't get going really at Minnesota. Billy Kemp had 5 catches. Thomas Fedoni had a couple of catches and a touchdown. Borkature, the tight end, has continued to look very consistent. Alex Bullock, not his best day, but played a lot of snaps. Marcus Washington as well. Those 3 key guys played almost all the snaps at wide receiver. But it was good to see Kemp and even Fedoni at least get going a little bit.
Especially Kemp. 5 catches. he have 8 targets, 5 catches.
Mhm.
Yeah, Kemp looks real to me. I mean, he can be. I mean, he's solid. He's going to be solid. I think he's a guy definitely you can count on.
He looked like what I thought he would look like in that game.
Yeah. Washington looks a little slowed still. It's like he hasn't dropped the trailer off.
Doesn't get a lot of separation.
No, he looks. I think he's. I don't know, Sean. Rob, was that an ankle or a knee in camp? I don't even know exactly what.
Yeah,
it was.
so it was an ankle
Because
he came down on it and it rolled, and they thought it was going to be way worse.
And it still looks like it doesn't look like he has all his speed to me. So that's something to watch going forward. Once he does, he's a huge factor. Now he was a huge factor in Minnesota right away. Not as big a factor last week, 1 catch.
Yeah, and I guess now the question is, who else in that group now is going to take that step? We saw Kemp finally get going. Is anybody else going to get going? Are they going to play enough to actually have an opportunity to get going? Those 3 starters at wide receiver played almost the entire game. When you look at the snap counts,
I know
Malachi Coleman played maybe a series.
Jalen Lloyd
didn't play at all. And so, Matt Rhule talked about that at his press conference on Monday, that, that he really likes that young receiving core, but it's taking them a little bit longer to get to a situation where they're ready to make an impact. You compare it to the defensive line, all the freshmen playing there, it's a little bit slower going for those receivers, and they need them to catch up as quickly as possible.
Well, a lot of those receivers weren't really developed guys. They're more track athletes.
Like Jalen Lloyd.
That have football potential. Jeremiah Charles only played 1 year high school football.
Bryce Turner, is he like that?
Bryce Turner played 2 years of high school football, I think, and that's it. I mean, we haven't even heard Bryce Turner's name mentioned.
Rhule mentioned him, but he said he's one of those guys that's even further behind. The guys that are going to have the best chance to play out of that freshman class are Coleman, Lloyd, and then maybe
Jaden Doss,
Jeremiah Charles. Yeah, he said those are the 3 guys that he said are close.
Doss is out.
Doss has a broken arm, and he's still working. He just started getting back to some practice work.
He said he had a broken arm, but he's practicing.
Yeah, so I don't know.
And Rhule, that's what Rhule says. He has a broken arm, but he's practicing. So it's probably some kind of bone in there.
Guys, we got about a minute left. I want to make sure we get this in. Teddy Prohaska, are we close to seeing him inserted in on the left side? If the Turner Corcoran struggles,
who knows?
It's such a wild card, isn't it?
I have no idea. I mean, we know that Rhule said he was ready, but how ready? That's the question.
Yeah, well, I think he's healthy, but then I think it's just the getting settled into a live game action again and having the trust to be out there. He hasn't played a live game of football in over a year now.
Yeah, so I don't know.
If Turner gives up a bad sack or play, we saw them pull Latoski out mid-series. Would they do something like that with Teddy to give him an opportunity? And again, it goes back to, is Teddy even ready to play?
Right. I mean, being healthy is one thing. Being fully ready to play a Power 5 team is another. Now, this isn't a Power 5 team. Maybe that makes a difference.
But they do have a good defensive line.
Yeah.
And and I will say Northern Illinois, usually they're undersized D linemen. And for a 6'10" guy that's got bad injury history of legs, is he going to be able to bend at a level? Northern Illinois is like the king of the 6'3" defensive end, 6'2" defensive end that is all sawed off and didn't get recruited much out of high school. And they have motor, though.
Right.
And they're going to go out. And we saw it in 2017.
Yeah, we did.
They had a bunch of little sawed off D linemen that Nebraska's big tackles couldn't block.
Hope they're not listening to this. So give them prime motivation.
I'm giving them compliments.
Sean calling them sawed off little linemen.
Do you think? Well, come on. You don't go. I mean, guys at Northern Illinois are typically an inch or two shorter.
They look like you.
Remember who pays your check. All right. On that note, we'll go to break. We'll talk defensive storylines next. You're listening here to the Husker Online Show. And we're back here on the Husker Online Show. Sean Callahan, Steve Sipple, Robin Wash. Before we get into defensive storylines, this segment of the show is brought to you by our all-season-long sponsor, CHI Health. September is Prostate Cancer Awareness Month. This year, it is estimated that over 288,000 men will be diagnosed with prostate cancer, and over 34,800 men will die from the disease. September is Prostate Cancer Awareness Month, and I want to remind you to talk to your health provider and about when prostate cancer screening should begin. Men at age 50 and older should talk with their healthcare provider about when to begin their screenings. Finding prostate cancer early makes treatment easier. If you don't have a provider, visit chihealth.com to find your provider and a CHI Health clinic near you. Once again, thanks to CHI Health for sponsoring us here on the Husker Online Show. Let's get into these defensive storylines, guys. I do think that's one of the real bright spots. Nebraska right now leads the country. They're tied for the nation lead with sacks, along with Tennessee. I mean, that's a really good stat to hang their hat on. They had 8 sacks at Colorado.
100%.
Should have had more.
Yeah, I mean, we've been begging for sacks, so I don't want to gloss over that. The fact they have 11. That's something that we've been talking about kind of for years here. And here we are with 11. Cam Lenhart had 2 on Saturday and boy, number 11, that's a good picture. I mean, if you're talking about bright spots and thinking about the future, Cam Lenhart, Prince Will, Riley Van Poppel, Rule talked about it a few weeks ago, how much he loved. Remember, Rob, we were listening to his radio show. Sean was watching tennis or something. And Sean, your daughters are beautiful. And Rule talked about how much he loves that defensive line group, guys that are playing, guys that aren't playing. In that class of 2023, that's a strong group.
Yeah, and that's where it starts with that group. I mean, to not only just be able to get to the passer, but the way that they're playing the run. I mean, they've made it tough. They made it tough on Minnesota, and that's what they do. Like, that's their MO, is run the football and be the more physical team in the line of scrimmage with that offensive line, and they weren't. They had to throw the ball as much as they've ever had to under PJ Fleck, and that is a credit to that defensive line. So, the emergence of those young guys has answered a lot of questions about some of the concerns we had about that group, and then you add in guys emerging at the next few levels to where, a Mekhi Bayer is stepping up, and he's becoming a playmaker, like making big time hits. And, just the younger guys in that secondary too, that are stepping up. Like, that picture is really coming together a lot better and a lot quicker than certainly I expected.
Yeah. I think the defense, if this gets going for Rule, it's going to be defense is going to be a big part of it and what they've done at Tony White. But there was a picture in that game where you saw 3 true freshman D linemen on the field together. Cam Lenhart at one defensive line spot. You had Princewell Umanyalan out there, and then you had Riley Van Poppel, who had to basically take a lot of the Ty Robinson snaps.
Yep.
And it doesn't sound like Van Poppel is only going to play 4 games. I mean, they want to keep playing him. Then we even saw Suoloftu play, and he recovered a fumble late in the game. Now, I don't know if he's going to play more than 4. We'll see. I get the sense they want to keep rotating and developing. We haven't seen this many freshmen play, especially at a position like D line at Nebraska, in a long time.
No, and those guys, and I would say Prince Will is explosive. I mean, he's an explosive guy. He's not made a lot of plays, but you can watch him and see explosion. Lenhart is making plays. He had 3 tackles in the opener. Then I think he had 3 or 4 tackles against Colorado, including 2 sacks. He's flashing more. Van Poppel looked like he belonged to me. I mean, he looked like he belonged. Now that's against Colorado, which isn't great up front on either side of the ball. But I'm not pouring cold water on Van Poppel. You put a freshman in that environment. You guys were there. Some guys aren't cut out for it. He looked cut out for it to me.
Well, then there's guys like Jason Machacek. They call him Shake Shack. He's
in the
not
wings.
playing,
in the
but
wings.
he's in the wings. He's coming.
Yeah.
Did Ruquan Buckley play, Robin, in your snap?
No,
think he did
not.
Okay, I noticed that. I just wanted to make sure. I wanted to verify with my.
He's a run guy, and Colorado just didn't run the football.
Good point.
Very much. And so, I think that was just kind of the way that they had to play Colorado.
Elijah Judy
played a
saw
lot.
some good reps.
Yeah, Judy played. He's been averaging 20-some snaps a game over the first 2. So he's a factor in that rotation.
Well, both teams passed a lot.
Yep.
I mean, Minnesota is a run team, but they passed it 35 times in the second half. Judy, among their bigs, they're 260-plus pounders. He's their best pass rusher. He's got a little wiggle to him for a big man.
But he's probably just 20-ish snaps a game still. They're not
21 yet.
They're not going to look at giving him like 40. But I don't know if they want to play too many guys that many snaps.
The question I have, and I could ask this. Well, I better ask Tony White this tomorrow. I'm interested that Nash Hutmacher is in on third down. He's playing a lot of snaps. I think he played 60 snaps. That's right. Does that sound right? Who did the defensive PFF?
I'm trying to remember.
I
Go
think
ahead.
I think Nash
Continue, I'll
played
confirm.
60, which is a lot for a big man. I'm just playing
Not sure it was
Coach
60.
Sipple here. I think I'd pull. I'd be saying, don't do that.
It was 40.
Yeah,
40.
I was gonna say I didn't think it was 60.
I was like 60 doesn't sound.
I'd still pull him off on third down.
but he's one of their best interior pass rushers. I mean, the pressure that he's getting up the gut,
He did get some
you
pressure.
pair that with the speed on the outsides, that's what you want. And
Yeah,
he's only playing 40 snaps.
That's
Let's
not
not
too
act
bad.
like this is like a 90 snap game. Like,
he's a big man though.
but he is. But for a guy that the storyline all offseason was how much better his conditioning was.
Okay,
You're seeing that.
Maybe
where he's able to stay on the field.
maybe you got me.
I mean, you remember like last year, Colton Feast played like 70 snaps against Northwestern
Yeah.
in Ireland.
he's smaller than that.
Yeah, but it just you can't do that. Like, I don't
No.
care if you have JJ Watt. You're not going to play those guys 70.
No.
I mean, that was
It's a formula for disaster.
like the previous staff, I think, had so much pressure on them at times that they failed to worry about development for the future because they
they
had
had
to
to win.
worry about just winning now. It was like survive in advance.
Mhm.
And
I think I just got to ask White what makes Nash good on third down.
Well, I'll tell you, we even look at the Pro Football Focus grades as a frame of reference. Now, they're not everything. They're certainly flawed. But as far as guys that played over, 17 snaps, he had the highest pass rush grade of anybody on that
and the
defensive line.
highest D line grade.
Yeah.
So
So
take that, Sipple. I'm just thinking ways to get him a little rest.
Back checking you though,
yeah,
that
but
60
it's
snaps.
40 snaps.
Yeah,
40.
that's not too bad.
I mean, that's nothing.
What did he play against Minnesota?
Right around there.
Did he play that? Okay, keep him in on third down. I just like a little more speed in there.
Guys,
A little more whip.
Bayer has been to me the real like out of nowhere story.
Totally.
Like this
Totally.
was somebody that nobody.
No.
I mean, he came last week, made some special teams tackles, and got rewarded with more defensive snaps.
No, he wasn't on the. He was on the field in the first
2
series.
snaps.
He was on the field in the first series against Minnesota.
Yeah, but that was it. He only played 2
He
snaps.
played 2 snaps.
2 snaps.
Yep.
He's come out of nowhere completely.
So he went from 2 snaps in Minnesota. He played a lot of special teams at 43. He played 1 more snap than John Bullock. And Nick Henrich,
wow.
looks like he's coming back. I mean, his tackling grade was low, but 25 snaps for Nick Henrich. MJ Sherman's the one that's kind of surprised me. Like, I was expecting more. I mean, a Georgia guy, 5-star guy.
I was too.
I mean, it's just been. I'm not saying he's not a good player, but the production and when you're watching the game, you don't say, "Ooh, there's MJ." I mean,
No, here's the thing: that entire jack position has
that's what I
not
was gonna
been.
say.
Yeah,
It has
Ford-
not been what you want from that jack position. Those are supposed to be your best kind of athletic, not bigs, but most athletic guys, and they want playmakers there.
Yeah.
And they haven't got that. They haven't got
That's
that.
exactly what that position's supposed to be.
Right.
And they have got hardly anything out of that group.
Not much.
Jamari Butler returned. He played 13 snaps and really didn't do a whole
Mm-hmm.
lot. Chief Borders only played 11 snaps, didn't do much.
Mhm.
So it's
They're
like
not showing up.
that's too important of a role in that defense to get that little production.
I'm surprised by it, frankly, that we haven't seen more
Same.
from that position.
All right. When we come back, we're going to bring Abby Barmore in, and we'll take your questions in the mailbag. You're listening here to the Husker Online Show. And we're back here on the Husker Online Show. Sean Callahan, Steve Sipple, Robin Wash, Abby Barmore. Time for the mailbag. But before we get to that, this segment and show brought to you by Bauer Underground. Bauer Underground is helping shape Nebraska's infrastructure future and is looking for new members to join the team with open positions for laborers, equipment operators, aerial linemen, and foremen. Bauer Underground is searching for the best in construction. Visit BauerUnderground.com to learn more about career opportunities and industry-leading benefits, including competitive pay, employee-paid health insurance, dental, disability, vision, and life insurance, 401k match, new top-of-the-line equipment, and a clothing allowance. No experience in the underground utility construction? No problem. Bauer will train the right people in the field, giving you the hands-on experience you'll need to build a long, rewarding career. Want to learn more? Visit Bauer Underground on Facebook to view the testimonials from current Bauer teammates, hear about their experiences, the company culture, and the importance of their work. Bauer Underground is family-owned, and they have crews and work sites across Nebraska. Wherever you live, Bauer has an opportunity for you. For more information, like Bauer Underground on Facebook or visit BauerUnderground.com. Come start your new career today. All right, let's get into the mailbag. Abby, where are you starting us out today?
Okay, first one. If Nebraska's first 4 games were reversed, would the Huskers be 4-0?
Great question, because I do think there's something to it. If Nebraska was able to kind of have the Maryland versus Charlotte game.
Oh, God, yes.
Charlotte was beating Maryland, and Maryland was able to kind of
14-0.
figure it out and win. Nebraska has not had that luxury. They've had that luxury for years. And
I know.
You could make an argument that that's played a factor in the records we've seen of Nebraska because of the nature of this place. When Nebraska starts the season with a loss or 2, all hell breaks loose. And it's hard, I think, for the players to kind of get confidence and whatnot, where if you could just start out with a couple of games in a row, I do think it would make a difference to get some momentum.
A couple of easier games.
But like last year, you could argue Northwestern should have been a win.
A couple easier games in a row.
Yeah, Minnesota on the road. But last year, Nebraska should have beat Ireland or beat Northwestern.
Yeah, but that was still a Power 5 team. I see what you're saying. I 100% agree. I don't know that enough's being made of it. And I wouldn't say this necessarily if it wasn't a first-year staff. It's a first-year staff that wasn't afforded the opportunity to ease in. Mm-hmm. I do think there's something to be said at times in a program, wherever a program is, for easing into it. Georgia eases into it. Alabama eased into it.
Michigan.
It would have, yeah, they're really easing into it. But I'm not saying you run from tough games, but there are, like a season like this with a first-year coaching staff that's changed things significantly. It would have been really nice to play Louisiana Tech out of the gate. Let Sims maybe get some confidence. Maybe he turns it over a couple times in the first half or 3 times, but Nebraska's still able to win. And then the conversation is not as hot. Maybe he learns from it, takes it into the second game, is a little bit better. Now you're 2-0 and it's not a freak show, right? Yeah. Now we're dealing with what? It's just hot here. It's all of a sudden hot.
I mean, if Sims has one bad mistake against Northern Illinois,
it'll get hot.
I mean, it's going to get groany in that stadium.
So that would be my counter to that, though, is, I mean, if you got a quarterback turn it over 7 times in 2 games, you're not going to have a hard time beating Northern Illinois. You're going to have a hard time beating Louisiana Tech. I mean, just because where Nebraska is right now, like when your quarterback, your most important player, is making that many critical mistakes, it's tough to beat anyone. So,
but a much better chance.
Your chances are greater, sure, but there's no guarantees, especially with the mistakes they're making.
No, but man, ask it to go on the road.
I get what you're saying. I mean, the fact that you can make those mistakes and come out with a win, the whole vibe is different.
God, you were there at Colorado. That was. Now, listen, I've been covering. I mean, come on, we've all been covering this for many years. I haven't gone into many environments like that.
Can you imagine if that was a night game? I mean, I've never seen.
I don't even know if that would be healthy.
10 a.m. A, use the F word so much in my life.
Right.
And B, be that jacked up at 10 a.m.
Hey, hold on now. Humor me on this. I don't think it would have been healthy to have that game at night based on what I saw. Yeah. Based on what I saw and heard from
there would have been casualties.
Why are they charging?
Casualties.
Okay, why are they charging the field to beat Nebraska? I mean, why are they charging the field? I don't know.
Students were out of control, but I mean,
students just wanted a party.
Right. It was a party.
And they were trying to get Rule off to not be a part of that. And then he's smart. If Rule didn't shake Deion's hand, that would have been another
a huge disrespect story.
Didn't even shake Deion's hand.
Right.
The disrespect.
Well, that was smart by Rule to demand that he gets that moment, because if he wouldn't have,
it would have been a story.
Colorado would have used that.
Didn't even shake coach's hand.
Right. They would have. Yeah.
Shedeur Sanders, like, waving his Rolex in the face of Billy Kemp, but then like Matt Rule inviting him to come in and join their prayer, and then him acting like they disrespected the Buffalo.
Okay, now let's just be very clear on how we feel about this. I thought that whole thing was very contrived by Colorado.
Completely contrived.
Yeah. I mean,
that's a team that was just looking for motivation. And so they took one snippet from an off-season interview Matt Rule did when he was asked directly about his strategy for building Nebraska compared to Deion's, and he said he's doing things differently. That was talking smack about my pops, apparently. And then they go out and have a team prayer, which they did against Minnesota. And if you go back and look at what Matt Rule, all his teams do that. Yeah. And so this is nothing new. And they take that as the whole team like stomping on the Buffalo.
Oh, come on.
No, they were praying.
Right.
I mean, it wasn't like they were out there doing bad things to the Buffalo.
Yes, no. They were standing there. It was like a slow kind of trot out to midfield.
Sanders says that Buffalo means a lot to me.
Yeah, he's been there, like 4 months? Get out of here.
All right. We've kind of ate up the whole mailbag on question number 1.
Sorry.
What's next?
Okay, our next one. Why do you think Rule is sticking with Sims? Is it because he's confident that he'll overcome the turnovers, or is there a big drop off in the next QB?
Well, that's a good question. I think there's two things at play there, Abby. Number one, Rule and Satterfield, that's the hand-picked guy. It was a calculated decision. It wasn't whimsical. It wasn't, oh God, we got to go get a quarterback. Let's get that kid from Georgia Tech. This is the guy they studied and elected to bring in. And Abby, if you go away from him, that's an admission that you fouled it up. Okay, that's number one.
Mm-hmm.
Number two is, the second part is how steep is the drop-off?
Mm-hmm.
I would ask you guys this, and this is what I would ask fans. And there's a lot of smart fans and a lot of smart people that have told me you got to move on. I've heard that, but I still say, really,
you better be sure.
Are you ready to hand the team to Heinrich Harburg? Because that's what you're doing. You're handing the team to him. I hear these comparisons in the turnover discussion to the running back. You're not handing the team to Gabe Irvin.
Nope.
You're not handing the team to Ramir Johnson, but you would be handing the team to Heinrich Harburg. So no, I just don't think it's at that point.
They invested too much into Sims.
Investment.
I mean, Amigos, Gary Michaels clothing, Acres equipment. I mean, there's a lot of investment in this guy to just close the book in 2 weeks.
But also, coaches made an investment. The coaches,
the NIL is a whole separate thing, right. But there's a huge investment. Sorry, Robin.
Yeah, and I would also, we have a pretty recent example of what happens when you do that. Remember when Adrian Martinez got benched? They brought in Luke McCaffrey. Didn't go well.
No.
And then you had this weird kind of revolving door at quarterback where there was no true leader at that position. It was kind of a game to game. They didn't really know what they were doing.
You got to look down
from week to week.
You got to look down. You got to be able to think 4 or 5 steps ahead. What if Heinrich Harburg doesn't succeed?
Mm-hmm.
Now, what are you going to go back to Sims? And now what's that?
And you got a whole nother mess on your plate.
Right. Now, it's possible, of course, that Heinrich Harburg would succeed, but that's a judgment call, and it's based on what they're seeing in practice. And it doesn't feel like, based on what Rule has said, that he's ready for that Heinrich's ready for that.
Yeah, that Adrian McCaffrey one, I still don't even think Frost and Verduzco back then wanted to do that. But they almost felt like the call of the mob that they had to try something different.
Which would be a very similar situation that we're at right now.
Well, if Saturday goes poorly for Sims early, there'll be a call of the mob.
No doubt.
Yeah, you'll hear it in the
And
stadium.
then if they went to Harburg, he'll get this huge, it would be like a huge, it would be hard for Sims to hear,
oh, God.
The other guy.
Let's not talk about it.
All right, final question.
Another subject, please.
Okay, our last one. What is your best story from Boulder this past weekend?
Oh, Sean,
God.
Sean,
Do we
looking over at Sean at the sports bar, the sports bar with no cable, looking for the Wisconsin-Washington State game by himself with the remote control in his hand. That's one thing. And then the baby sitting there too, which is funny.
We ate at a place.
You can say, Sean.
It was a former Outback Steakhouse.
Is that what it was?
Turned into a combination barbecue food, Indian food restaurant. Co-management.
Your typical combo.
I mean, so you could get fried chicken with Indian food sides.
Yeah,
you
could get mulligatawny soup as your starter before your rack of ribs.
And at one point we looked over and what was sitting next.
So we're sitting down. First of all, there's one waitress crying her eyes out.
Yeah, balling.
A lot of pressure.
We walk in and Sam or somebody from the World Herald goes, "Hey guys, just buckle up," as we get down. And then there's another waitress who's had way too much to drink.
Yeah, she's ripping shots behind the bar.
Should not be working. Then there's a bartender that's just sweating, running around this place with a chicken like his head cut off. He was trying to serve 40 people by himself, I bet. And then you had a baby. So we're sitting at our table, the table next to us. There's a baby carrier. And Robin goes, "Guys, there's a baby in there." And I'm like, "No." And all of a sudden the baby starts crying. The other waitress working there had her baby in the restaurant and started serving and walking around with the baby. I politely asked if they could turn the Wisconsin game on one of the TVs, and I was shut down.
The guy said, "I got a lot going on right now, man."
And I said, "Hey, sorry, we're at a sports bar. I figured I'd ask." And
so Sean just goes and grabs the remote off the bar and starts messing with the TV.
But they didn't even have cable. It was like an antenna.
Yeah, it was an antenna.
And it was like this hanging pad off the TV.
Oddly, though, The chicken was
Yeah, the food was
incredible.
great.
Yeah, the food was excellent.
Drinks were great.
I had fried chicken.
We
It was the
both
best-
got fried chicken at
and it
this
was
place.
very good. It was very good fried chicken.
Well, then the night
It was
bef-
like grandma's.
and then the
Grandma's.
night before we're in the
Grandma's.
same
Grandmother's.
place, and like
Grandmother's,
all
yeah.
these famous Colorado football players were there. Like Bill McCartney's son
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
in there.
The running back too, who just got signed by the or somebody. I'm blanking on
Bill
his name.
McCartney's son's an agent.
So yeah, it was an interesting experience. That was our. Well, and I was sitting at
Our walk. We had to walk quite a bit.
Well, I would tell you this. You guys didn't know this because I didn't really tell you, but I went down to get a burrito before the game, and I just sat in front of that big buffalo they have sitting out there. I sat on the base of the buffalo and I ate a burrito, and I just kind of watched the scene. And man, there was a kid in a red shirt that was basically getting assaulted by Colorado students, like trying to take off his shirt at one point. Cops intervened. I didn't intervene because I was sitting there eating my burrito, but
These kids are lucky.
but man, it was rough. And then the kid, his name is Josh, came up to me and said, "Did you see all that?" I said, "Yeah." I mean, there were kind of waves of Colorado students coming up to him and just yelling at him right in his face.
It's just rich, punky kids too. I mean,
Yeah.
these people that are screaming, they're not all Colorado fans. It's just
I don't know what the hell's going on.
What's
half the
crazy is the girls were the
pretty bad.
biggest trash talkers.
There was some serious trash talking.
I know.
It was I can't listen. Again, we go to all these games. I've been to every road game for 30 years. And I have not seen an environment like that. I have not. And then I heard at the airport guys talking to me about how like they felt unsafe going to the restroom.
Yeah, they're getting screamed at while they're peeing in the restroom.
Yeah.
instead of Catholics versus convicts, the Miami Notre Dame, somebody said they should call this farmers versus frat boys.
I don't know what I
don't
the
know.
dynamic. I can't really explain it.
There was at least one brawl in the stands that went viral.
Oh, and a
on-
Nebraska
on
guy
TikTok.
gave some visor wearing
Easy, Sean.
polo shirt Colorado kid a hell of an elbow.
Mhm.
Did he?
elbow to the temple, knocked him out.
Oh,
Kind
hello.
of ugly.
See, I think a night game, and I'm not joking around.
I'm saying that would be everywhere.
Yeah,
at
I think a
game.
night game. When you say casualty, there'd be casualties.
Seriously.
Casualties.
All right. Well, think if Nebraska would have won.
Oh God. Oh God.
All right. When we come back, we're going to talk Big Ten football games next. You're listening here to the Husker Online Show. Final segment here of the Husker Online Show. Sean Callahan, Steve Sipple, Robin Washett as we talk Big Ten games. But before we get to that, segment 5 of the Husker Online Show, Steve Sipple, brought to you by
Sean, Larson Motors. If you happen to be looking for a new vehicle, go for a new experience at Larson Motors in Nebraska City. Larson Motors is one of the Midwest's only dealerships with all the major brands in one location. Finding your new Chevy, GMC, Hummer, Ford, Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, or Ram really has never been easier. So start your new experience today at LarsonMotorGroup.com or at Larson Motors in Nebraska City. Larson Motors, real people, real deals.
All right, lot to go through here of the games from week 2. Penn State took out Delaware 63-7. Obviously, Nebraska lost to Colorado 36-14, but Purdue gets an impressive road win at Virginia Tech 24-17.
Wow.
Ohio State's offense has not put up a lot of points, 35-7 over Youngstown State. Iowa 20-13, and they had a pretty good lead, and then Iowa State came back, but they take out the in-state Cyclones, who they have had their number in that series. Michigan State 45-14 over Richmond, but the real story actually happened after the game when the USA Today report on Mel Tucker came out, and he took a leave from his position. So that's going to be a developing story
He
for
was
the
suspended.
rest of the year. Michigan played their cream puff schedule, and without Jim Harbaugh, they beat UNLV 35-7. Northwestern, how about that? They beat UTEP 38-7. Maryland came back to take out Charlotte 38-20. Minnesota had a nice, impressive win over Eastern Michigan 25-6. Rutgers beats Temples 36-7. Washington State beats Wisconsin 31-22. And then Kansas takes out Illinois 34-23. Indiana also beat Indiana State 41-7. But let's stick in the West here.
Yeah.
Illinois getting drubbed by Kansas. But then how about Wisconsin getting handled on the road by Washington State.
You know, former Nebraska coach Bill Bush, he says Washington State would win the West, the Big Ten West.
They don't have a conference for next year.
Think
Not
about
saying
that.
much right now.
No, it's not. That's why I bring it up. The Big Ten West is not great. And Sean, I'm surprised to hear you say Minnesota's impressive win against Eastern
They
Michigan.
ran the ball well.
They beat a directional Michigan team.
Yeah, but their defense played well.
Okay. You're not.
I mean, their
you're not
defense
being
has given up
convincing.
8 points a game in 2 games.
Yeah, Eastern Michigan. Anyway, yeah, the West. I don't know what to say about it. I mean, if Washington State could win the West, which I think they probably could.
This season is why the West is going away.
Yes.
Mhm.
Like, it can't continue.
Could the Big Ten just have stepped in this year and said, "Okay, I know next year we're going to divisions, but no, actually, we're just going to do it this year, or we're going to wipe away the division
because the
this year.
conference championship game
Just wipe it away this year."
is going to be crap.
Exactly.
Mhm.
They probably could have done it a year early, right?
Not in a 4-team playoff, though. It's actually better to not have Michigan, Penn State,
Yeah,
and
that's a
Ohio
good
State
point.
play twice
that's a good point.
because they're going to try to get 2 teams in this year.
Good point.
Now you go to a 12-team deal, different story. All right, let's get through week 3 games. Friday night, Virginia at Maryland. Maryland trying to go 3-0. Georgia Southern comes to Wisconsin. Clay Helton, baby. That'll be a lot of throws in that game.
Yeah.
Louisville at Indiana, big game for Tom Allen with Jeff Brom coming back into Indiana with his new team. Penn State will be at Illinois. Big noon kickoff studio show will not be in Champaign. They moved that to Boulder, but Gus Johnson and Joel Klatt will still announce that game.
Okay.
Minnesota at North Carolina. North Carolina ranked 20th. They're a 7-point favorite. Northwestern at Duke as an 18.5-point dog. Virginia Tech is playing another Big Ten team this week. They'll be at Rutgers. Rutgers favored by 7.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe pump the brakes on that Purdue win because I'm not sure how good Virginia Tech is.
Right. I agree. I agree.
Western Michigan at Iowa. Hawkeyes big favorites. Western Kentucky at Ohio State. Washington at Michigan State. The Spartans are getting 16 points at home.
Yeah, I saw somebody say, like, am I foolish to think that this isn't the lock of the century to take Michigan State with the points? Like,
Washington's loaded.
thinking that they're going to rally around all this, they're going to
Could be,
and,
yeah.
and
They
use it
could
as a
rally.
unifying thing. But my counter to that is this is like the kind of exclamation point on what has already been a tumultuous offseason for Michigan State, to where they've lost pretty much every key player on their roster to the portal. And they just went through all this stuff, and now your head coach is gone in an embarrassing fashion, and now you got to play a top 10 team. Like
a top 10 team that's rolling, by the way.
Rolling.
Washington just rolled Boise State. Okay, that's Boise State. Washington, Michael Penix, one of the best group of receivers in all of college football. I could see him going in there and putting a whooping on him. The game I'd watch really closely, and I will tell you right now, North Carolina will beat Minnesota by 17 plus. Okay.
Because of Drake
They'll-
May.
Yeah, they'll boat race. I think they could boat race Minnesota.
All right. Nebraska, 11.5-point favorite over Northern Illinois. Michigan in their vaunted non-con schedule. They'll play Bowling Green, 40.5-point line.
There you go.
And then Syracuse at Purdue. Syracuse, Dino Baber squad, 2-0. And they'll be playing at Purdue this week. So Syracuse is a 2.5-point favorite. So it should be a great week with a lot of interesting non-conference games, along with the one conference game. Can Penn State go into Champaign and win as a 14.5-point favorite? But make sure you join us again for our post-game show after the game. We're going to be on late night game, but had over 20,000 views, guys, on our post-game show on YouTube and then the podcast site as well. So lots of Husker fans taking the post-game show. Invite you to join us on the Husker on YouTube channel or anywhere you find podcasts. Also check us out at HuskerOnline.com. For Steve Sipple and Robin Washett, I'm Sean Callahan.